When we see suffering around us, one of the key questions that we want to ask is, why did it happen to that particular person? She was so good, he was so kind. It's completely unfair that he was in a car accident. Why did she get born with that illness? In my final year at university, one of my best friends died. He was one of the smartest, most caring, kind guys that I knew. He was overseas for a year and he climbed up onto a roof and to get a football and fell through it, hit his head, and he died. Suffering is indiscriminate and it happens to the best people. Christians need to be careful about how they respond when they hear things like this. You often hear people say things like, their suffering was needed for them to learn something, or God made them ill so that they could learn something through that. Now, it's absolutely true that God can teach us things in the midst of suffering, but that's very different to saying that God causes something to happen so that we can learn from it. In the Jewish scriptures, what Christians refer to as the Old Testament, there are books referred to as wisdom literature. Each culture has their own wisdom literature, and when the Old Testament was being written, the prevailing view was, if you do good, you'll do well in life. If you act badly, bad things will happen to you. The wisdom literature in the Old Testament turns this upside down and breaks the link between moral behaviour and what result you get. So just because you do good things, because you give money to charity, because you help old ladies across the street, does not mean that you'll be exempt from suffering. And my university friend is a good example of this. Jesus says some similar things. God, he says, causes the sun to rise on the evil and the good, and that he sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. So what does all this mean? Bad things happen to good and bad people alike. If you're suffering, it does not mean that God is punishing you. But also in the midst of your suffering, be alive to the fact that God can speak to you and teach you things that otherwise you would never have learned.